Good evening and welcome to the Unraveler Show with your host, Alan Bondar, and my other guests tonight for another special episode of the Deconversionists. First, there were 4. Now there are 2 more. How many more will we find? I don't know. It depends on how many people Tim interview because I'm just going to keep stealing them from him. So, Tim, Harmonic Atheist, thanks for joining us tonight. How you doing, buddy?
Thanks so much.
It's great to have you here. And he's one of our new ones. And then Jamin Collar as well. How you doing, buddy?
Yeah, good to be here. Thanks.
Glad to have you, man. And then, of course, everybody knows Tristan Gabriel, the debunker. What's up, bro?
What's happening? Thank you for having me.
Right on, right on. All right. So anybody who wants to follow any of these guys, their links are below. You can follow their channels and listen to them or read Jamin's book or whatever it is that you want to do to follow anybody here. But tonight we are talking about healing after deconversion. We all have similar but different stories. So we're going to have a chance to discuss some of that because if you are a person who has deconverted from Christianity or any religion for that matter, you know how painful that can be. You know the challenges that you face. And we want to share our stories with you as well and help you know that there's hope on the other side if you're feeling that struggle. And not just that we've completely healed, because I can speak for I don't know if I can speak for these guys, but for myself, at least, I'm still in the journey. Like I still sometimes have some remnants of pains there that remains and discomfort. It's very frustrating. So we're going to talk about all that today. If you're a Christian listening in, I'm glad you're here because it's important that you understand the depths of struggle that it is when somebody escapes Christianity. None of us are faking here. None of us just woke up one day and said, well, you know, I'm done tricking everybody. I'm just going to not be a Christian anymore. And it didn't hurt or something. That's just not true. I hope you realize through this episode that it was real for us. It was very, very real. And it was not an easy thing to go through the struggle of deconversion. So that's what we're going to talk about. I want to introduce Tristan's story a little bit here first through his mouth, obviously. But since you all know him and a little bit about what we've done in the last couple of episodes, Tristan, can you just, and we're going to do this very briefly because this isn't an episode about how we escaped. It's an episode about the deconversion, but just so everybody kind of knows where you are, tell us a little bit about your kind of maybe your final moments, if you will, of your deconversion. Like, how did you get out? Like what made you finally say, hey, like a light bulb went off?
Yeah, essentially, it was the introduction of full preterism. I was a full-time minister, and when full preterist eschatology was introduced to me, I became a full preterist, just like yourself, Alan. I took it hook, line, and sinker, and then I started questioning the resurrection and some of its essential doctrines. And then I was fully persuaded that the New Testament was a failed prophecy in that sense. And so I hang my hat on failed prophecy. I still believe that the correct eschatology would be a futurist eschatology. And that's why the majority of Christians are still waiting for this. But, I'm a skeptic, and at the end of the day, just like how you stated before, we're not faking this. I'm as genuine as they come. And I just want to benefit humanity, and I want everyone to be happy, So my deconversion moment was when I saw that the New Testament doesn't apply to us today, morally, ethically, and in the field of eschatology. And so, yeah, I had that moment, and it was gradual. And I'll say that the grass is greener on this side, and I'll end it with that.
Awesome. For me, my last step was prayer. Over the many, many years, as you know, I journeyed through full preterism with you. And I think one of the reasons it was so easy for me to finally wake up and escape is, number one, I no longer had the blinder of my church career as a pastor keeping me from seeing these things. Because, let's face it, when that's your career, it's very, very hard to allow that allow the possibility of atheism to even creep in. You shove that away. There's no way, like, you're just like, that's not possible. Right. Because if you entertain that, you could very much lose your career, so, and that's ultimately what happens, obviously. And it's very sad. But fortunately for me, all of that part of my life had already dissolved. So I didn't have that blinder anymore. And it was like, what's holding me back now? And I was able to open my eyes. But also the fact that I had already been a full preterist, for me, realizing the same thing you did, the whole thing about it is all the benefits are just spiritualized now. And so I got to a point where I was like, what is this? What do I have here? What am I gaining by holding on to this? Everything's just it's all based on faith. Like I have benefits, but what are they? What are they doing for me? And then, just doing my prayer walk, and one day talking to God, and I was like, I just stopped mid sentence, and I was like, who am I talking to? Literally realized I was talking to the air, and it was in that moment, and right there, right very moments, as I stopped and said that, I said out loud, I think I'm an atheist. It was just that cut and dry for me. It's mind blowing. 1 second to the next, I went from being a Christian to an atheist. It was just wow. It's just and then I wept, quite literally, started crying, because it was just so painful to realize what I have now discovered. It wasn't a fake cry. I fell to the ground. I wept for a long time. So when people question us and say, "Oh, you were never a Christian," I get angry with that. I'm like,
Oh
you
yes.
don't even know the pain I felt in that very moments. So anyway, so that's my brief story. Tim, we're going to go to you, because I think a lot of people do know you as well through Harmonic Atheist and your stories and your interviews. You're the testimonial guy. You've done so many, and they're so cool, and it gives people hope, because a lot of times you feel alone becoming an atheist. So having your channel is wonderful, because they can be like, what? There's people like me, right? Really cool. So tell us your story a little bit.
Sure. Well, in a nutshell, I'll keep it short since a lot of people have heard my story, but I was raised as a Christian, loved the Lord, wanted to serve him as a missionary and a pastor, went to school, got a degree in pastoral ministry, and was headed more towards missions toward the end of that time frame. Wanted to plant a church in a tribe in the jungle, do Bible translation. That was my everything, literally, and was working on books about worldview and prayer. It was just, God consumed my every thought, and my every desire was to bring everybody I could to heaven and let them know about the love of Jesus and about the beauty of the gospel. Little did I know, but I had some children come along, and they became my savior much more than Jesus ever was. As we're singing a song, Joshua fought the Battle of Jericho, I thought to myself, I'm going to have to eventually explain to them what happens next in the story: genocide, land theft, slavery, child bride stoning, etc. And thinking to myself, I don't know if I can teach my kids this stuff. And for 3 years, I wrestled with that question, and it exploded into a whole bunch of other unrelated areas. Eventually, the main focus of my study became comparative mythology. End of September 2019. Same thing as your story, Alan. It just suddenly hit me. I was like, I don't think this is real. And I went through a few final objections in that hour. And when I was done, I was like, nope, this wasn't real. And it was the most beautiful moment of my life, best decision of my life. And I'm so glad I'm free. And yeah, the channel is focused on just helping other people tell their stories. Stories I think are powerful. And I feel like it's just a beautiful thing to hear. Everybody's journey is different. Everybody's reasons are different. But at the end of the day, we're all coming to a point of saying it's time to reclaim our lives, and that's a powerful thing. So I'm very glad to be part of the discussion.
I'm glad you're here, and you'll find Tim's story in brief as well in my new book coming out, the revised version of How to Kill God the Easy Way, under a totally different title. So when you look for the revised version, you won't find it under that title anymore. I took the advice of so many people that said, great book, but my Christian friends don't want a book called How to Kill God the Easy Way. Who knew that would be a bad title? I loved it. I thought it was great. I still would have as a Christian, but anyway. So Tim's story will be there, as well as Jamin's. Jamin's story is in the book as well, and I'm very excited about that. And I'm very excited to introduce to all of you Jamin Collar. Jamin, why don't you go ahead and share people's story? You are the person that has a call to empathy. You have kind of a slightly different perspective in having not only an empathetic perspective for Christians, but you're calling Christians to empathy, which is very, very awesome approach. So why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about where you are?
Yeah, if we can ignore my allergy to the word calling for the moment, I'm gonna, I will say I'm going to be the most annoying atheist because I still consider myself a Christian, depending on when you ask me, and I find that to be annoying to both Christians and atheists. But yeah, my dad was a pastor. I gave my life to Christ according to legend when I was 5, and of course, every opportunity I had after that to recommit my life to Jesus. I was in full-time ministry from the age of 16. I became the worship pastor, and from there until age, I'm gonna say 39, that everything was, perfectly right on track. Jesus was my best friend. I talked to him multiple times a day. I went through seminary, graduated from that. It was an evangelical seminary, which is to say we knew the answers going in to all the questions that we were going to ask there. But I spent a lot of time on it, even though at this point, looking back, I don't think that I actually studied the Bible. I did, let's see here, educate myself in God's word. So anyway, it was my deconversion, if we're going to say that I have one, is a little bit different in that I first fell out of love with my personal church. I knew there was something wrong there, and there were cultish elements of that. My dad being the pastor, the next thing I lost after that was I knew I was losing my family. And then after I lost my family, that's when through a series of really messy 4 months, essentially that led to me losing all of my church community. And at that point, I had nothing left to. There's no threats left. Like what I could just be honest about the questions that I had about God up until that point. So at that point, I was free to actually come up with the answers that I found when I was searching for these answers that we've all looked for. Problems with the Bible or whatever. And so then when I was finally like, I wasn't losing anything, like, well, actually I can say that it seems like this part of the Bible might actually not be accurate or something. If that's what the evidence led me to, there wasn't anyone there who was going to be like, well, now you can't be a part of our family. Now you can't be a part of our church. Now you can't be a part of our community. I already lost all that. So then I was just kind of free to be honest, because it was just me and my internal honesty. And so that things just fell apart. And I don't know that there's like a moment. Like I said, there's still today, depending on when you ask me and how annoying I'm wanting to be at the moment, I'll still consider myself to be a Christian. Like I talked with you about, Alan, sometimes I'll still pray. And, I figure God used me for 39 years. I can use him now. I don't think he's really there. But if it works for me and that, helps me to like unload some of my troubles, that's what he was doing all along. So just because he's not there doesn't mean that I can't still make use of that. So anyway, I would say if I had to pick a moment or something, it was when I was open to the possibility that maybe there were problems in the Bible. Maybe it wasn't inerrant. That crack grew into the chasm that would become, let's say, my atheism, if I am an atheist.
Okay, very cool. So what you have here, folks, tonight is two full-fledged atheists, Tim and myself. You have Tristan, who does not yet consider himself an atheist, at least per our last conversation. Is that still accurate, Tristan?
Yeah, I consider myself an anti-theist, but I do leave that a room of a possibility that there is a divine mind or minds or something else that's out there beyond the human race.
Right. Well, and Tim and I would too. I mean, that's atheism. There's well, at least the way we would find out. We don't. Atheism
sure.
isn't just the statement that there is no God. It's the statement that we have no evidence that there is one. We just don't believe there is because there's no reason to. But if somebody were to come and demonstrate it to us, I'd be like, okay. I mean, I still might not follow him. I'm still an anti-theist with you. So even if there was a God, I'd be like, well, folks, now I'm talking that there is a God, but I still hate him. So that would be our perspective. So what you would define as non-atheism or anti-theism, I would say is atheism, as Tim would as well. So we'll see where you are next time we talk. But that's where you are at this point. And then, of course, Jamin, sometimes an atheist, sometimes not.
Yeah, dual citizen. I'm not unclear on what I believe. I just don't like labels. So
Yeah.
Fair enough. And that's cool. No worries there. So here we are then. All of us in different stages of journey. By the way, if anybody's wondering, Jamin is only 18.
that's right. Going on 19.
Bro, can any of you guess how old he is? Well, Tim, because you've interviewed. Tristan, take a guess. How old do you think he is?
Be nice.
I was 39, 38.
Oh,
perfect.
Okay.
Yeah,
Apparently you look your age. Never mind.
Yeah. All right.
Well, he stated it earlier. I think you stated it earlier. That's why.
Oh, is that why?
I was listening. I was paying
You
attention.
were listening. All right. See, I apparently wasn't. Too funny. All right. Well, then you're too observant, Tristan. All right. So here we are. We're going to just go down the road then and talk a little bit about then our healing after deconversion. And so Tim, let's start with you. you went through much similar type of pain that I did. That moment, I mean, it was just like a trigger moment. He's not real, and for me, I wept, and then we'll talk more about the process of deconversion. But why don't you start with that moment, the emotions that ran through you, the feelings you had, and take us as far as you feel like right now for this section, and then we'll move to somebody else.
Sure, that sounds good. Well, I would agree with everything you said. And by the way, if I can add a quick comment about the term atheist, I think it's interesting when you really think about it that a lot of our discussions about the definition of atheism are also dependent on just how we actually are defining the words. And I feel like in many ways we don't have the words for it. We just there's so many ways in which our language can't encapsulate all the ways that this could actually, whatever started the universe, whoever's guiding principles or whatever you call it, that there's just the words aren't there. So we're basically we're one or two stages out of being primates. It's going to take a while for us to get the language and the science to understand it. But I do feel at the moment pretty comfortable with the word atheist. But
yeah, no, I agree. And just to capitalize on that, like the only reason like the word atheism even exists is because theism exists. Somebody came along and said, hey, there's a God. And so we said, prove it. And they couldn't. And we're like, well, we don't believe there's a God. And that therefore the term atheism came about. Theism. I'm not a theist. That's as simple as it is.
Yeah.
So by default, we're atheists. It's not like we're walking around saying we are atheists. It's,
right.
It's a default term.
And I think too, I think some of us have talked about this before in different contexts, but we wouldn't really be able to tell eventually the difference between a God and a civilization that had a million years future advanced technology than us. We just wouldn't. If you had something that was Star Trek, but a million years future from Star Trek level, how would you know that that's different from a God? You really wouldn't. And it gets very messy at that point. But anyway, to get your question,
can I throw
oh yeah, go
Jamin.
that
too?
Yeah.
Just because I hate labels, I would like to point out that the Christian world does the same thing. Like there's like, what if you go on any like true Christian internet forum and ask them like, what does it mean to be a true Christian, or how can you be sure of your salvation, or how do you get saved? They're all going to fight with each other on the answer to that. Like, what does it really mean to believe in God? So it's all right if we got 40,000 different brands of Protestant Christianity. It's fine if there's lots of different brands of not Christianity as well. Like we're all going through this in our own way. So I think when I hear atheists talk about the definition of atheist, there's some for me, there's got to be some recognition of like, well, we're all individual people and we're all experiencing this differently. So we're not going to find a right way of saying it, even though there are lots of people, just like there are in Christianity, lots of people who think, no, if you're going to use this label, this is exactly what it means. And I've got the reasons for it. We just don't have a magical book.
Right. No, I think that's a great point. And just to clarify, so one thing that I try really hard to help people understand when they think atheism is a worldview, I keep trying to say, look, atheism isn't a worldview. It's not like atheism isn't a claim. It isn't a statement of faith. It isn't a declaration of any facts. It isn't some system of belief. It's literally the rejection of a claim that a God exists. That's the long and short of it all. Beyond that, me as an atheist, I'm going to have a different worldview than Tim's going to have, or that James is going to have, or that Tristan's going to have. We're all going to have different worldviews, but that's because we're individual humans, not because we're atheists. As atheists, we agree with one thing and one thing only. I don't believe that God exists because there's not enough evidence. That's as far as atheism goes. So many people try to paint this picture that atheism is a worldview, and there's so many of them. We're not splintered. We don't have 50 million different statements of faith. I have no connection to Tim as an atheist than I do anybody else. We literally believe that one thing. I just deny the existence of God. Simple. That's it. And I wish people would see that. Like, again, it's the default position. Until a theist comes along and says there's a God, everybody's an atheist. It's just a term didn't exist. But that's it. That's all it is. So that's why I feel comfortable calling myself an atheist, because I'm not declaring a worldview by that term. Now, as a humanist, you better believe it. I've got a whole worldview of stuff going on, just as Tim would, and we may disagree or agree on some things, but as atheists, that's it. So anyway, I hope that clarifies in some minds what we're saying by the fact that we're atheists, or atheism in general. Like, that's just we just got to keep that simple. I don't want atheism to become blurred like that, because it's not, because then it throws me in a category that I don't want to be in. You know
Right.
what I
Well,
mean?
that's why we have so many different denominations of Christianity, is because we don't want to be in the same bin as those losers over there who think about this the wrong way. Right. And so, like, I'm thinking about it the right way. And so, to steel man the opposing opinion, like, there is a, so then obviously after whatever your theistic stance is, like, well, of course Jesus is God, and so then everyone should live this way. And I think for atheists too, or at least a lot of them that I know, like, there's a, well, of course there's no God, and so then, and what comes after that is obvious to them and not necessarily obvious to all the rest of the atheists. So it can seem like there is an inherent unavoidable worldview that comes out of atheism that I think a lot of people are referring to when they refer to atheism. Well, if you don't believe in God, well, ask a Christian. Well, then you have no purpose in living. So atheists are people who have no purpose in living. To them, like, that is the definition. And for me to, this is where, again, labels, it's hard to get out of that, because there's so much that follows after that, so obviously, to each person that you ask. I don't know if I'm making any sense of that.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that I'll just say too, with the anti-theism word, which I know Tristan you used, I think the thing for me is not as much that I'm anti-theist, it's that I'm anti-mythology. I feel like there's the question of, like, there's so many beautiful, mysterious parts of the world and of nature and of our experience. Who can understand it all, and who can not get just enraptured by looking at the night sky or the beauty of a baby being born. It takes your breath away. It's beautiful. And so there's a freedom there to look at the esoteric and the transcendent parts of life and say, is there something there? I don't have any problem with thinking there might be something greater. I just don't want to be changed by mythology, by somebody who, 2,000-3,000 years ago came up with some garbage and, decided to, impose that on us. And now we're still dealing with it. So I think that's my anti-theism part of it. It's more anti-mythology. But to answer your question, Alan, because I feel like I've took us off track today. I'm sorry.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Tim. No, that was
My
good.
fault.
That's okay. That was fun. I think that's fun. I think people like to hear that too. So that's great. You go ahead.
But I think there's a lot, when you think about religious trauma, I think there's so many ways in which you could talk about, endless things for hours. And that's why some of our channels exist, is to talk about it forever. But I think the biggest thing I would point out for me is just that it was real in the sense that he was my actual father. And I've used this illustration before in other interviews I've done, but my physical father died in January of 2019, and I deconverted in September 2019. So his funeral was still sort of vividly in my mind. And I remember thinking to myself, as I had Christians just be very nasty and rude and snarky and snippy to me about it, that it would have been so weird and inappropriate if someone had come into my father's funeral, 8 months earlier, as we're sitting there in the pew grieving and, seeing the pictures on the screen and all that and saying our goodbyes to him, for someone to come in and say, "What are you doing? You're an idiot. What do you think what are you doing? You're just so stupid." I'm like, "Excuse me, I'm grieving. My father just died. Can you let me have my moment to say goodbye to him in peace?" But Christians don't do that too. And I think it really points out the fact that they're tone deaf to the religious trauma, that this was your more important Heavenly Father. Like, if you're like my human father, whether he was good or bad or whatever, he was here for a short period of time, but I expected in my mind to be with my Heavenly Father forever and ever and ever. And the goodness factor was obviously exponentially greater for Yahweh and Jesus. And so when you have that perspective, it's wrapped up in so many other little parts of, like, your human purpose and the beauty of the gospel, your desire to go to heaven and rewards, your sense of well-being, that God is looking after you and he's got angels watching over you. You have that, all these little senses, but the biggest thing is just, my whole purpose in life was to someday get to see my Lord and Savior's face, and to know that when I saw Jesus, I would be glorified and like him. But more importantly than my being transformed, I would get to see the face of the person who is the definition of love, who loved me more than I could possibly imagine. And in that moment, I knew that it would take my breath away to finally see him and to think all the questions are either answered or they become irrelevant. Like, this is what you're made for. This is, like, everything is designed for you to finally come to the loving arms of Jesus. And he was, when you're living that way, and it's, we talk a lot about how if you're kind of like in it for Christmas and Easter stuff, it doesn't impact you the same way. Like, religious trauma is more like the rules of purity culture or whatever. But if you were really, 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 really in it and you really believed it, the greatest loss is the actual loss of the person of the Father, your Heavenly Father. you don't care as much about, oh my goodness, I could have been sinning more and it doesn't matter, whatever. I say that tongue in cheek, of course, but I could have been looking at life so differently. I could have had all these different experiences. Like the biggest trauma is your identity is wrapped up in his identity. And so when you lose that, you're losing that relationship that didn't really exist, but you thought it did. You're losing your best friend. And then you're also realizing eventually, trickle down, that loss is huge, but then you realize I've seen myself through the grid of who I am connected to him. So if that loss is great, I need to also now secondarily recognize I've never been myself before. I've never, used my own eyes before, as that Morpheus said to me, you've never used them before. So that loss to me is probably one of the biggest starting points I think about for my own life. And it shook me up in that first hour. But at the same time, I will say this, and I'll let someone else take over. To me, I would say I've heard people say this was a huge loss and they go into a depression. I may have done some of my grieving during that 3 years of my studying, thinking through it. And so I may have already been grieving that whole time. But at the moment that it hit, I literally started laughing and I felt like I had won the lottery, because I thought, I know so many people that will go to their deathbeds thinking this was all real and they will never have lived a day in their lives. At least you've probably got some time left to be yourself and to see the world through real eyes. And that to me was a glorious thing. So it was a mixture. My biggest angst still is I wanted to go to heaven. I don't grieve as much the loss of Yahweh because I see him now as more of a psychopathic character, but I wanted to be living forever. I wanted to experience what I thought was an incredible dream of what heaven would be like. So that still hurts. But at the same time, just the initial impact was like, you just won the lottery, dude. Like you have so many people, hundreds of people, thousands of people surrounding you who are so self-deceived, they will never wake up probably, given what you know about them. And what I know about my own path, my own journey up to that point. It's like, you won the lottery. This is great. But I understand that the pain is still there in many ways. So my greatest pain or shock was just, oh my God, God's not there. So it's a hard journey when you really, 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 really believe it,
Wow. So my first reaction to that is the encouraging word that I won the lottery. There's still time, because for me, one of the things that I struggle with even today is how much time I lost, how much time I wasted. And I dwell on that sometimes. And it's a negative place to be, because I just feel like there's so many things I could have accomplished in life or enjoyed in life, and I lost out, but I like that perspective. There's still life and there's still time. And I like that. That's a very positive word. What are your guys' reaction to what Tim said so far?
Yeah, first and foremost, Alan, I've heard you make that comment in the past, and I've dwelt on that comment. It's stuck with me, and I just want to say I believe that your best days are ahead of you, and I just want to give that word of encouragement, not as some sort of wishful, hopeful thinking. Yes, I go back to you. I'm 36, almost 37, and I go back and all my 20s, I gave to the ministry. I was born and raised in it. Um, and I'm hoping that there is some sort of purpose in this, and that's what we're doing right now. So I just want to say that, Alan, I still believe your best days are ahead of you in all aspects of life. And to me, your health is your wealth. Keep yourself healthy. And you know accomplish your goals, short-term goals, long-term goals. And your channel is very beneficial, your book is very beneficial. And who knows what's going to happen, less than a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And so I'm hoping that we have a more optimistic view of the time that we look at that was quote wasted. But now, I still have that evangelistic mindset of a soul winner. If I could just help that one. I have students that grew up, Jamin, you said that you had like a cult-like church. I grew up apostolic, United Pentecostal. Our women didn't wear makeup, long hair. I couldn't wear a short sleeve, couldn't wear shorts. For sure, couldn't have earrings or tattoos or nothing like that. And we were considered to be a cult even among other Christians. And I have students of mine that I see are apostolic. And if I could just win one of them over and deliver them from, this cult, I believe that I've won their soul in a sense, and I've delivered them from, like you said, Tim, mythology. That paradigm of mythology is absolutely eye-opening. And like I said before, Alan, I don't believe that your life in the past was wasted, but I do understand why you would ponder on that. I think we all do in some extent. But I just want to say I believe that all of our best days are ahead of us. And anybody who's listening here, today matters, and the present is a gift. And all you can do is live life day by day. We're still not promised tomorrow. And at the end of the day, we still can, love ourselves, love our neighbor, and, let's benefit humanity. That's all I want to say on that.
Cool. Jamin, any thoughts on Tim?
Yeah, on a just to piggyback on that, I think in this discussion about healing after deconversion, like that's one of the more common um things you need to heal from, I think, is just the regret of all that wasted time. Just like, yeah, getting out of any bad relationship. Like, but what about all that time that I was doing that and I could have been doing anything else? And like Tristan's saying, like for me, I take a look at, I've listened to a lot of a podcast called Mormon Stories, and there's like this whole world of deconversion from Mormonism, and listening to the stories of those people who are older than any of us, and they spent their whole lives in it, and then they're out, and I'm trying to like put myself in their place and be like, okay, so if they were like, well, I spent this many decades and it's all wasted, and what's the point, and I wasted my whole life, I would say to them, well, no, you still have life left. Like this is okay, but there are other Mormons who were in it longer. And same thing for Scientology and like whatever it was. It to me, it feels like, well, what's the point now? I pretty much wasted my life because I spent all my best years doing this stupid little thing that, playing this game with this character that didn't exist. But then, just trying to project that in another situation of looking at other people who have spent even longer in it. Like, you know what? We're all we're all effed up. Like we're all screwed up. We all got dealt a crappy hand here, and we're trying to do our best with it. So I think trying to put myself in someone else's position helps me have more self-compassion of like, yeah, so I was stuck in this for 40 years. I got out after 40 years. Like, let's go. Let's start over now. But yeah, I think there's a lot of grief that that deconversionists have to deal with after getting out of like just that same thing of what about all that time that I wasted? What about all those other people that I got them more into it? I taught them how to be better Christians, and they're still in it. Like all this grief. It's a lot to deal with. That's why it takes so much effort to heal after deconversion.
Yeah, I appreciate those thoughts. Before I respond real quick, Robert Pierce, you said what happened to the rest of the video? Only 5 minutes. You're watching from Facebook. I apologize, folks. For some reason, Facebook had a hard time. It was some kind of a glitch, and it wasn't feeding the video. Apparently, it just started, so you did miss the first 5 minutes, and I apologize. However, you can catch it on my YouTube channel because when the show is over, it will be there. Or I even think live, you can go and start over if you're interested. But it will be, the whole shows did capture on YouTube. So I apologize if you're coming late on Facebook. But anyway, Jamin, those are some great thoughts. So for me, like one of the things that I did to help me overcome that regret of my past was to initiate that, as Tristan called it, the outreach mentality, still trying to save people, so that's why I wrote my book. Number one, it was healing for me, because as I got the thoughts out, it helped me, get through a lot of that pain that I had. But then I realized, I can actually help people. And if I can do that with the second half of my life, then that actually makes the first half pay off, because I'm like, hey, if I didn't go through that first half, I wouldn't have been able to produce this. So the book comes out of all the knowledge I have because I was a Christian for 40 years. So I agree with you guys. And I think it's benefited me. So yeah, I thought more so like that earlier on. Today, I feel like that less than I did before, but I'll be honest, there's still days that creep up and I'm like, gosh, I wish I would have, and a lot of that. And Tim and I have talked a lot about even, sexuality, and we'll maybe even do a show together on that at some point, because that is a big issue, and it's one of the things as Christians, you live in the purity culture, and so you don't experience so many things that you could have in your prime. And here you are in your 40s and you're like, seriously right now, it's like, so that was a big frustration for me. And so that is one of the things that I get irritated about. But it's not just sexuality, all the Sundays you gave up and all the money you gave to the church for who knows what, and all the different, there's so many different parts of it. But anyway, I don't want to belabor that, but to y'all's point, yeah, there's so much to be had because of our past that we can contribute to this world. And that's what I'm trying to do.
Can I interject really quickly, Alan?
Absolutely.
Tim, I know you've been very patient, but I just want to say this. Let's say,
Oh, no, good.
let's say religion was not part of our life. Who knows? We could have been dead if we weren't in church. Something could have happened to us. A car accident or whatever.
Good point.
Maybe us being in that church world saved us from something, you know. Could have gotten into a relationship, could have got an STD that would have took your life. It could have been anything. So this is why I say your health is your wealth. You know, try to be as healthy as you can and try to preserve you know, the life that we have. You know, I'm excited for AI and what it's doing. I hope that it takes over somehow in the medical field and finds new discoveries. You know, I'm excited for what the future holds. You know, I just wanted to interject on that because I do ponder. I go, well, what if I never was in this? Well, something really terrible could have happened to you. So, you know, we just kind of enjoy the moment. I just want to just quote this from Bertrand Russell. I think we all know who he is, a renowned philosopher. He was an agnostic, but he's been attributed to a lot of atheistic literature. Bertrand Russell states this: three passions, simple but overwhelmingly strong, have governed my life: the longing for love, the search for knowledge, and the unbearable pity for the suffering of mankind. And that quote from Bertrand Russell, even when I was a Christian, I think that I could relate to that. And I still relate to that even to this day. Thank you.
No, that's great. And honestly, I because I was a Christian, I actually got to enjoy a 20-year marriage with a wonderful woman. And it just, things just didn't work out at the end for various reasons, not related to Christianity at all. But that, so I wouldn't have had that experience. So there are some positives that came out of all of it. And you're absolutely right. So we're gonna go to Tristan next. Tim, we've all had a chance to talk. Did you want to say anything else before we go to Tristan's story?
If I could just say one quick thing regarding, I think what Jamin and Tristan together said, I think it is a beautiful thing to take this journey that we've been on and spin it positively, not some kind of toxic positivity, but just to say, like Tristan just said, this might have saved you from something. Certainly, it kept some of us on the straight and narrow in ways that maybe we would have screwed up our lives in different ways. And I think that's a discussion in itself to be had. But also just to say, at this point where we are, it does a couple things to me. Number one, it inspires me to heal, like we're doing in these discussions, but to really find the words. And I think, for me, it's a lot of poetry that I write. For Jamon, that's poetry that ends up being music, which I'm jealous of. But it also ends up making you inspired to think about the kids. To say if I'm going to say to myself, in one sense, I want to be positive about the time I've got left, but also to appropriately grieve the time I've lost. I think an appropriate way of grieving is to say, I will do my best to make sure the next generation doesn't have to go through what I did, to leave this planet better than I found it. And also, it's like that question of how are you leaving the planet, but also how are you leaving the kids? Are you leaving them in a good spot for themselves and for the planet? And that's a big driver for me. And I think lastly, I would just say that I think that the coolest thing, this is going to sound a little bit snarky towards Christians, but when you know how the sausage is made, you can do a lot of damage. And I like to say, if I put 1,000 people in the kingdom, I know how to take 100,000 back out, and I'm going to do it. And I don't mean that necessarily as snarky as it probably sounds, but I mean it in the sense that I think if enough people get the word of where this mythology comes from, Christianity is just by definition screwed, because people are going to be like, what the hell? Why didn't you tell me where this thing came from? They're just going to leave. They're just going to realize this is just a system of control. That's all it is. And I think that's really cool, because if you hadn't gone through what you went through to get here, you could not undo Christianity the way you now can. You know what I mean? So that to me, that's a big deal.
Dude, you're 100% right. Like, because of my knowledge of Christianity is why I could write the details in my book that I did and educate people and help them understand what they're dealing with. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I feel your thought too. I put so many people in now. I feel like a responsibility to get back out. All right, Tristan, let's transfer to you. Tell us your story from your deconversion a little bit, and tell us what you experienced going through all of that.
Yeah, just to tag along what you had just stated, we often get criticized like we were never saved, we were never genuine, something like that. Or the other one is, well, if I came to your conclusions, why are you even still talking about the Bible and theology? My response to them is, yeah, that's how dedicated men like us we were to this, that we're still willing to discuss this and help somebody out and not be selfish with this. It speaks volumes of our altruism when it comes to the Bible and Christianity. People go, well, if I ended up like you, I'd go out and party and drink and do all that. Well, hey, you could still do that, but at the end of the day, Bible theology is passion. And even though I'm a skeptic, I still enjoy and love Bible theology. It just speaks volumes, the fact that we're still dedicated to this. So I just want to commend each and one of you gentlemen for that. because at the end of the day, we gave our lives to this, and those who are at this level, only they could understand. And those that are at this level, we become the most beneficial people within these topics, because we've been there, done that. It's not like we were just some casual believer. No, we gave our entire lives to this. Even going to Bible college, seminary, writing books, doing whatever you have, being in full-time ministry. That's not just the average Christian. So when we're at this level, I think that we can better have more weapons, I guess you can say. We're more equipped, and I believe we have more validity. So my deconversion, yeah, I remember I was in my car and I cried, and you can say I felt the same symptoms of the Holy Spirit, an overwhelming sense of love and joy, deliverance and peace, and I cried, and it was when I saw. I'm speaking in-house topic now, Alan. When I saw the IO conclusions, the Israel-only conclusions of full preterism, I remember listening to a man's channel, Jason DeCosta's channel. He was challenging Don Preston, who I'm going to be debating, by the way. Alan, I don't know
I
if you
know.
know.
I can't believe it's
August
finally
the 10th.
happening.
Yes, on Myth
Holy
Vision
cow.
podcast, August the 10th. This is going to be a legendary debate. I'm going to give a blueprint on how to debunk this doctrine called full preterism. And at the end of the day, that's what I like to do. I like to have open live discussions, I like to have debates. I think that they're beneficial towards humanity. But yes, my deconversion, but was that I remember I felt those same symptoms of the Holy Spirit. And what can I say? I felt born again, I guess you can say, but I'm still the same person. I may do a little few activities that may have been considered immoral or sinful in the past, but at the end of the day, I'm still the same person. Nothing has drastically changed, and I feel, much more of a purpose now, more than ever. And so, at the end of the day, my view for humanity, to benefit humanity, yes, it was for the gospel, but now it's not. I just want everyone to, have a life of peace, tranquility, and have purpose in life. And so that was pretty much it. So when I debate or I have live discussions, it just better affirms this, that I believe I'm in the right camp. I believe that my conclusions are correct. And so at the end of the day, I believe in the 21st century, religion is no longer needed. Yes, we can look towards, political theory, judiciary theory, a more of a humanitarian sense, more of a secular sense, I guess you can say. And that's what I'm hoping for the future of humanity. And so at the end of the day, I like how you said, Jamin, sometimes you say you're a Christian and sometimes you're not. I still tell people, look, I'm a Christian at heart. There are things that Jesus had stated that I still hold dear. But you could find that in other religions as well. Things that are morally and ethically driven, and fulfilling. So that's pretty much it. Alan, was full preterism, that doctrine, which essentially made me question everything within eschatology. And then it made me question existentialism. Even before then, I delved into philosophy. I loved philosophy, loved science, because you're supposed to be an apologist, you're supposed to have a defense to those who question your faith. So I loved Christopher Hitchens. I respected him even when I was a Christian. I would binge watch every single one of his debates with Alistair McGrath and every other Christian he would debate. I respected him because in a human mindset. And even when I was in Bible college, I even remember sitting down in one of my classes thinking, you know what, if I wasn't born and raised in this, I'd probably be a skeptic. I'd probably be an atheist. I'd probably be one of those because there's just so many questions. The existence of evil, if I could hang my hat on one of them, that one is terrible. It's absolutely terrible, especially upon children. And so that's pretty much my motive. I would like for humanity to pretty much abandon religion. But if people want to be religious, as long as if it's purposeful for them, as long as they're not hurting anybody, as long as they're not starting a war, like what's happening out in the Middle East right now, we all know this is a religious driven war. And that's the underpinning motive of everything that's happening right now. And people are dying, children are dying. Why? Over this mythical belief from between Muslims and Hebraic mythicism. This is absolutely unacceptable in the 21st century. And so any little thing that I can do to deliver somebody and to bring about peace, love, and joy, peace now more than ever. That's my purpose and my goal in life. And so at the end of the day, I'm thankful. I'm thankful for what the present has. I'm thankful for what the future holds. I still view my life in what I like to call like a deathbed paradigm. I think about death very, very often. And it's to me, it's somewhat liberating because every hour of my life counts. And if I were to die, I want to reflect on my life and say, hey, you know what? I lived a fulfilled, purposeful life, and I accomplished my goals and my dreams. And I lived a wonderful life, just like philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein had stated on his deathbed. He reflected on his life, and he said, I've lived a wonderful life. And that was a very famous quote from him that is still attributed to him to this day. You know, the student of Bertrand Russell, known as the greatest philosopher in the 20th century. And so at the end of the day, that's just where I'm at, you know, and just enjoy the little things in life and, you know, love yourself and love others. That's where I'm at.
Nice. So my initial reaction to some of the things you said, one is uh, the idea that I still am the same person that I was when I was a Christian. Nothing has changed about my personality. I still value people the same way I did before. I still live very much the same kind of a life. I'm still a good person. I still try to contribute to society. But there are some different things too that I don't live the same. I no longer try to defend, for example, um, God of the Bible and the atrocities of slavery and murder and rape and pedophilia and things like that. Like, as a Christian, I would always find myself trying to make excuses for God or trying to find a way to make it sound like those texts don't mean what you say they mean when they actually did. So it's nice to be free of that. I no longer have to defend those things because it's that Old Testament especially is pretty evil. It's rough. It's rough when you actually give it the due that it should have. So that's a nice thing. I also no longer, I didn't really fear hell once I was a full preterist. I had eliminated that doctrine a long time ago, but I no longer have the concern of if I'm going to go to heaven versus being annihilated or whatever. So that's another thing that's nice. Like, even though the idea of dying is kind of sucky sometimes because it's like, well, when you die, you die, and you won't have any memories. It's just what it is. At the same time, it's nice to have that relaxation that you don't have to have in the back of your mind. Am I going to go somewhere? Am I not going to go there? Am I going to go to this place? Am I going to be punished or whatever? I don't have those fears or those dreads anymore, those concerns. They just don't matter to me anymore. I just literally live my life because what happens is happening. It just doesn't matter. So I do the best that I can to contribute to society because I want to leave a good legacy behind. I want to be a good family man. I want to be a good father and a husband. And I want to be all those things. Why? Because they make me happy. Right. And so when I'm contributing to the benefit of others, it actually brings me joy. And that hasn't changed about me. It's always been like that. It's just, as a Christian, I was a Christian hedonist and I did it for what I call the glory of God. Well, I just took the middleman out. I don't need to do it for the glory of God. I'm just doing it for me. And it's the same thing. Nothing's changed. I love to be a good person because it makes me happy. Right. So I mean, and I imagine that's what it is for all of us, So I consider myself a hedonist now. I just took the word Christian out of it. So that's my reaction. Jamin, what's your reaction to some of Tristan's thoughts?
I'm still processing the Christian hedonist comment.
Oh, you've never heard of that? Oh,
no.
Man. You need to read yourself some John Piper, bro.
Okay. Wow, I've heard a lot of his sermons, but I guess I haven't read enough of his books. Yeah, so like in talking about healing after deconversion, I feel like the purpose piece is a big piece that I personally feel, in my own experience, atheists frequently don't like to admit exists, because that's one of the first Christian accusations is, well, if you're an atheist, then you don't have a purpose in life. And for me, and a lot of the people that I've talked to who come out of Christianity, that is true, at least for a season. Like, you gave your life to this purpose. My analogy is like, if you're caring for a loved one, with Parkinson's or stuff like that, like that is your purpose. That's what you're doing. And when that person finally passes, your purpose is gone and you've got to restart. And so I think that for a deconversionist who like hears atheists say, well, of course we have purpose. We don't need God for a purpose. Like, well, actually, no, that God was my purpose. And so I'm without meaning. I'm without purpose. And maybe it's because of all the stuff they say. Maybe can I get back to God? Like, because I had a purpose back there. I had a community. I had like all the things that I'm missing now. And so like letting that process develop in you in the same way that you, like when you lose that loved one finally, like, yeah, that's just a process that you have to go through. And yes, you're going to have a new meeting, you're going to have a new purpose that was not your purpose for life, but also there's a transitional time there where you're trying to rebuild that. And like Tristan's talking about, and Alan, all of you guys, for a lot of us, it's helping other people go through that process or realize the ways in which their lives are not fulfilled because of the myths that they've given their lives up to. But what has been encouraging for me is the ability to write a purpose that was better than the one I had before, which is not a sentence that Christians would admit can exist. But I got there through, again, the Bible, because I realized at some point I could write a better Bible than God wrote. If I just took the current Bible and at the end of any of the books, just put "don't own slaves," like bam, now it's a better Bible. Like Jamin just wrote a better Bible. Like, holy cow! Like I'm more powerful than I thought.
Right.
Like, and that's when I got permission. Like, oh well, here he could have said this. Here he could have said this. Like, and I know it's not fair to like go back and like evaluate past morality based on current morality, but also he's God, he's timeless. Like that's not what we're dealing with. We're not talking about textual criticism. We're talking about infallibility criticism. So like if he was infallible now, he was infallible then. So if I could write a better Bible, maybe there's a chance I could also write a better purpose. Like maybe I can do, like Tim was talking about, maybe I can teach my kids that whatever the morals of the Bible are that you like, and you don't have to use the Bible stories. But then also those parts where I was like, I know as a parent, I'm supposed to encourage my kids to read the Bible, but this one part where this person rapes this person or this incest or like all this stuff, like I really don't want to have to teach them that. Well, I don't have to. I can have a better morality. I can be a better parent. I can make a better purpose for my life. So I could just do all the good stuff that I was doing before, except do it a little bit better, and do it better by all those places where I was like, this feels really wrong to me, but the magic book says I have to. Like now the magic book doesn't tell you have to. You can just do all the good stuff and be even better because you can actually follow your conscience, which is supposedly the Holy Spirit. Without the Holy Spirit, it's way better. So, I just, to affirm what you're saying, like, it's okay to feel like you don't have a purpose when you leave the thing that you were getting your purpose from. Also, it's entirely possible that there's a better purpose for you on the other side of it, and it's going to suck for a little while. Perhaps, maybe you'll feel like you won the lottery. Maybe you'll feel like you just lost a loved one. But on the other side of whatever that is, there is purpose, there's meaning, there's fulfillment. And it's just hard to imagine, as it always is. Like when you lose a loved one, like it feels like you're just never going to be happy ever again. But give it time. Give it time. Stick with it.
Love it, Tim.
Could I maybe take us back to one particular point? I just wanted to add a little nuance to something. The idea that we're still the same person apart from Christianity. Is it okay if I dive into that just for a second?
Of course. That's
I love the thought about it, but I do just want to add this. I think there's this, and everything you could say, there's a sense in which this, sense in which that. So I know I'm taking us down the rabbit trail here, but if you were to use this illustration, let's say you were to look at one of those kids who, I've seen videos like of kids in the Middle East who are indoctrinated into Islam and who are taught not just that Allah is the real God, but that their job is to be a martyr, to do something horrible to Jewish people, and they literally, as 5-year-olds, are chanting horrible things and wanting to kill people in the name of Allah. And they're growing up, with either real guns or at least pretend guns in their hands. And they're trained that the best thing they could probably do is either to fight and or to die, as a martyr for Allah. And then later on, they wake up and they realize none of this is real. And for someone like that, if you were to ask them, are you still the same person now that you realized that it wasn't real? I think they would kind of say, well, yeah, in a sense I am, but also I have been so bizarrely conditioned and damaged. And I'm not trying to insinuate that was any, that physical violence was part of my indoctrination. Although I would say there was some implications, and I went to a school where our mascot was the Crusaders. But when you look at a child like that, for them, they're going through so much. They have not known themselves. And I think you could, in a metaphorical sense, carry it over and say, we've been fighting battles that, we were indoctrinated into a cosmic battle from the age of 3, 4, 5 that we didn't sign up for. We weren't able to figure out what was real and what was not. And you could exponentially add other stuff to it. Like, you weren't, like in purity culture conversations, we talk about your embodiment, like you were disassociating from your body. I think that's true, but you could really say you were disembodied from yourself. You were disassociating from your psychological self this whole time. And in many ways, like I love how Tristan, I think you used the phrase "born again" from our days in Christianity, and a lot of us have used that phrase to "born again," and I think it bears some truth to it that we're in some ways the same person. Like I would have loved to help somebody change their tire on the side of the road as a Christian, and I'm still glad to do it. I'm glad to help somebody. In fact, even just yesterday, somebody was literally stuck in a lane of the road where it was like a lot of cars were coming, and I could easily have seen them getting hit. And I just happened to always carry around some orange cones in my trunk, and I literally pulled over and got the orange cones out and kept them safe and then helped them push the car off the road. Like that's what I would have done as a Christian, and I'm the same person now. It's just the thing we do. But I think in some ways at the same time, there's a part of us that we have to say, I don't know myself. And I think it's a beautiful process. It can be like where you're just like, it's a blank slate. I can decide who I want to be, but it's also kind of weird because there's a part of us that everything we're doing is in response to the trauma, in response to the lies. And it's like, if you were to take that child who was growing up with a gun in his hand, being told your future is to slaughter somebody in Israel, like that's your future and that's what Allah wants. If they were to go through religious healing, I can't even imagine the layers of that onion that they would have to unpack to figure out how to start fresh as a sort of reparenting themselves, going back and saying, as it were, yourself today, talking to your inner child as a 3 to 4, 5-year-old saying, hey, both of us have a conversation here. I need to reparent myself. It'd just be craziness on steroids to think about how to unpack all that and start over. And I feel like in some ways it's just a crazy life. I mean, it's like, what's that song? I know this isn't true, but God is great, beer is good, and people are crazy, something like that. And it's like, obviously, God isn't great. I don't drink beer, but people are crazy, and life is crazy, and we've been through some crazy garbage. And when you've been through stuff, like I think a lot about people who, like they're going through secret battles, and we talk about that all the time in life. Don't judge somebody. You have no idea what they're going through, and you look at people and you think, oh, they're in the grocery store. Who knows? That person might be suicidal. That person might be, dealing with stage 4 cancer. You just don't know. And you also think to yourself, some of these people are going through mental health issues where they've got 2 voices in their head or 10 voices, or just a voice of incredible shame. And I feel like in so many ways, it's like I've described it the way I've liked to use the description of like Plato's cave, where we're coming out of the shadows, but I almost feel like it's a multi exit thing. Like you're coming out of one cave, realizing you're actually in several other caves, and you have to escape several more. And who knows which one is the last one. And I remember for me, like for example, and I'll say this and shut up. When I was a Christian, my Christianity changed several times. I grew up as a firm Baptist, more free will kind of Baptistic person. And then when it was my Bob Jones era, it was more the fundamentalist Baptists were like, we're going to take a stand against the world, and we're going to fight the devil and all this stuff, and even fight the non-fundamentalist Christians, second, third degree separation. But then it sort of drifted towards a little bit healthier version of all that. And then it drifted towards Calvinism. And then it drifted towards, I don't know what the hell I believe. And then it drifted towards where I'm at today. Arguably, after 5 years of being in the same spot, and I'm very comfortable with where I am, I'm probably going to say I could probably expect to land here for the rest of my life. But at the same time, it's almost like that phrase, the old soul, like you're an old soul. I feel like we go through several lifetimes within a lifetime. And at a certain point, you have to say, this is crazy. Like, who am I? And it's a beautiful journey, but it's also very weird. And I am the same person as I've always been, but I'm also like rediscovering myself or reinventing myself. And it's just, I don't know what to say about it besides I feel like I'm taking it one day at a time, and nothing surprises me anymore, if that makes sense.
No, I love those comments. In fact, it's kind of interesting you say that, because one of the things that I'm allowing myself to do now is become whoever I want to be. Whereas before I was told who I had to be. And I guess you're right. In some ways, I have not yet fully discovered who I am. I'm still figuring that out. And the cool thing is, I don't have anybody watching my mind and judging me or dictating some purpose for my life. I get to dictate that now. But after 40 years of having someone else tell me what that is, it's like some days I have to remind myself, wait, who am I in this situation? What I get to make this decision. What does Alan want to do here? Not what does God want Alan to do? You know what? So I get what you're saying. Now that makes a lot of sense. Jamon, we're going to get to you, but because I want you to do your portion.
Okay.
But Tristan, do you have any thoughts on what Tim just said? And then Jamon, you can as well, and then jump right into your story.
Yeah, I mean, we're our identity is always evolving. I think Tim, you've made some great analogies. I'm gonna have to go back in the recording, and hear them again because they're very, very touching. Very, especially when you talked about the cave, and then you have all these other caves. It just makes life a journey. It makes life as an adventure. And so in this chapter, this is why I say our best days are ahead of us. And everything that's happened in our past, there has to be a meaning. And Alan, what you had stated, how you love to be a good person, I still have that same heartbeat. Anytime there is a chance to do good, to give sacrificially, I take that chance. Even with people that may not even know that I've gave sacrificially, I've helped people out financially, and they don't even know that I've helped them out financially. The people that I've met, that I've trying to it's better to give than to receive, I guess you can say. I still have that mindset, just like how you said before, helping somebody change their tire on the road. That's the type of mentality that I believe humanity needs, and that didn't come from Christianity. That came from the human heart, and we can see that all throughout history, all throughout anthropology. And to me, that makes humanity much more beautiful, that you can still have those intellectual virtues, and still have a sense of altruism, and still give, and still be a good person, be a good guy, and that's what the world needs, in my humble opinion. That's all I have to say on that.
Yeah, I think I see a lot of the same conversations and threads as I try to parent my kids, and they've got different ones of them have different fears about growing up. What I really like this season of my life, and I don't want to move on to the next thing. I don't want to go on to whatever it is, and just the grief of like having to give up your childhood as you go through the different stages, and trying to convince them like you're still going to be you still get to carry you with you, but yeah, like you're going to have things like at some point you're not going to want to play with Barbies. You're just going to wish that you wanted to play with Barbies, but you don't really, and like me with like looking at Ninja Turtles, like that looks like a lot of fun. Also, I don't want any, but I kind of wish that I did. I remember that nostalgia. And I do have that with Christianity. Like I not every week, but maybe once a month, I'll still be like, I wonder if I should go back and just like sit in a service. Like, how much would I hate that? Probably a lot. But like, I wish that I wanted to go to church, but I can't get myself there, and so there's a lot of that for me, of just like the nostalgia of like, yeah, I'm moving on, and I am the same person from before, but so drastically different. And this is not just a deconversion thing. I mean, as a middle-aged man, I don't know what percentage of this is deconversion and what of it is midlife crisis, and how much of it is change in career, or like there's so much that is changing. I don't know what to pin where. And here again, it's just like trying to put a label. Well, that's just your deconversion. That's just your midlife crisis. That's just your, I don't know. Sure. Yeah, whatever. All of it. I know that I'm here right now, and life is offering an adventure for me. And so I've got the tools that I've got, and I'm going to carry with me as much of me as I can. But also, I've got this deep desire to change who I am. I want to become stronger. I want to become faster. I want to become smarter. I want to become. So I'm actively trying to change me as much as I want to keep me the way that I am too. So it's like Tim is saying, it's life. It's messy.
What if you became stronger and faster than God? Is that allowed now?
I already am.
Well,
smarter too.
There you go. Why don't you go ahead and tell us your your portion of your deconversion then, man. Tell us about your experience.
Yeah, I mean, so can you specify a little bit more the question of what part of the story I'm telling here?
Sure. So you are now in that place of not being a Christian, being a
Yeah.
Christian,
Right, sure.
wherever you are. Tell us a little bit about the processing you have gone through
Yeah.
since all of that happened. The
Yeah.
feelings, the emotions you felt, those stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. So I'm going to say that the process that I'm in, as opposed to the process that I've gone through, because I think again, like the end of a relationship, good or bad, the loss of a loved one, loved or hated, actually, like you never, I never get over that. It is always, it becomes incorporated as a part of who I am. And so now that's why I have a hard time giving up the label Christian. Like if I moved to a different country, I would still have an American brain. And if you ask me, well, like you live in Spain now, are you Spanish or are you American? Like, yep. Like to all the Spanish people, I'm seem very American. But also all the Americans are like, well, you don't live here anymore. So crud. I lost my train of thought with my analogy. Yep.
All right, dude. I do
Okay.
that every episode, so you're good.
Okay.
My people are used to this.
All right.
Take your time,
where was
man.
I going?
Well, you had talked about being the difference in language and speaking
Yeah.
Spanish versus whatever, and then being a Christian versus not being a Christian, and so there's
Yep.
kind of parallel. You said,
Yeah. Who knows what that was? So, but the part of like deconvert. Oh, that I'm still going through it. That's what I'm still in it, as opposed to having gone through it. And so, just like in the loss of a loved one, you have these recurring. They call them the cycles of cycle of grief, or the stages of grief, or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's these different things that you ping pong through, and you're angry, and then you're sad, and then you're angry again, and then you're grieving, and whatever it is. Like I still have those on occasion, and it gets less and less and less, except for the days when it's not less, and it comes back really strong. So yeah, for me, I just feel like I'm still in it. One of the things that let's hear, let's go in order. One of the things that I've gained from this is that I think the thing that I've heard you guys hint at a lot is not the renewed, the new beauty that I have in my experiences with people around me. Because, like, for example, before, if I pulled over and tried to help someone with their tire, like I'm doing that for God. And so I'm going to help them with their tire. That's their earthly need. But what I'm really hoping is that I can do it with such a great attitude that they're going to ask me for a reason for the hope that I have. And I'm going to have a chance to share with them. And then this is going to have some eternal significance. Really, the goal is that they get saved. And this tire thing, I mean, it's a bummer, but maybe it's a way that they can get a little bit closer to God. Well, now that I don't have that, I can just help them. And that exchange can be the beauty. And it's so much more beautiful than before, when like I wasn't actively trying to be manipulative. I was actively trying to be manipulative. I wasn't consciously trying to be manipulative. But everything had this other purpose behind it. And if it, to the extent that it didn't quite reach that purpose, I wasn't quite satisfied with the interaction. The best interaction is any interaction that leads to me leading someone to God. So now that that's not there, like I can help someone and look them in the eyes, and they can say thank you, and I can say you're welcome, and we can just exchange this thing as beautiful humans, and then go on with our lives to try to do the same for other people. And it's just so much more fulfilling than back when I said that I had the greatest fulfillment that there was. And so, I mean, this is just more to speak to the beauty of the potential life that is on the other side of Christianity, which is not a thing that any Christian can relate to. I wouldn't expect them to. But if you're going through it, just know that like there is this more glorious version of life that doesn't have this underlying do it according to the book and do it for the right reasons and for the right purposes and all that stuff, which when I was living in it, I don't even think I wouldn't have related to that sentence. Like I felt like I was free to love God and free to, serve God. And that's really genuinely what I wanted to do. But then once I got done with that, it just, everything is just freer, more open, and more beautiful, really, honestly. And we talk about, Tim's talking about, getting out of the cave and then getting out of that cave and getting out of that cave. I feel like since getting out of Christianity, if I am out of Christianity, one of the beauties that I've realized is that it's all caves. It's caves all the way down. Like you don't get out of it. Like we live in such a nature is so supernatural that supernatural, even though it doesn't exist, it still exists. Like this place that we are is so magical, and we're so underappreciative of where we live and the beauty that's around us. I mean, for example, we say we have this label for light, we call it visible light, but that's just because we can't see any of it. Like it's all this electromagnetic spectrum that we have this like tiny little thing, and we call this light when this whole thing is light. And I feel like that one thing goes through all my experiences of just how miraculous it is to be here, to interact with people, we don't see the light, we can't smell the smells. My dog can smell better than I can. We can't hear stuff. We can't we're so limited, and we think this is reality. And then we like get out of the next cave and we're like, finally, this is reality. I got out of the matrix. And that's exactly how I feel. Like I do feel like I got out of the matrix, but then again and again and again and again. And each time it's like, oh, now this is reality. And so I'm finally settling into like, oh, I'm gonna keep like getting out of caves, but just for the fun of getting out of caves. It's not because I'm like finally going to arrive where I can like fully understand and experience the world. So anyway, all of that was just to say it's really beautiful. And to think that for me, I see some atheists who feel like they have finally arrived once they get out of Christianity. And that's fair. Like, I think we all go through that phase too. In the same way that when you finally realize that Santa isn't real, like you're like, oh, I got to tell everybody in my class now. And you want to go in and like tell the teacher and tell your, well, yeah, okay. So now you know all the reality of life, but you don't. And so I just think that, in my deconversion, things have both, reality has become a lot more open and a lot more closed, in that I don't have the answers. And so I'm just saying I don't know a lot more. Because before I did know, it was all in the book. You could know everything too. Just read the book. It's all in the book. Interpret it right. My pastor's going to help you with that. But now I don't have all the answers. So like I see that I can't see anything, and also I see so much more. That was cheesy at the end. Sorry.
No, good, man. Actually, so my reaction, all that was good. So this is one of the reasons why I not only call myself an atheist, but an agnostic. And I'm okay with labels for those reasons, because I think they define things. But as an atheist, I simply say, I don't think a God exists. But as an agnostic, I say, I don't have a clue what does. I don't know all the answers. I'm in this cave now, and that's fine. But I have no doubt that there's so much more. Like, so Tristan, you can definitely relate to this, and you guys might as well, but I know Tristan can. Journeying in Christianity from, well, I grew up dispensational, very staunch, Jesus is coming at any minute, the rapture is going to happen kind of thing, and lived like that, and then went through so many versions of Christianity, Auburn Avenue, Doug Wilson's view of things, perspectives on Paul, and I went to Reformed theology, then, and on it went, and then full partial preterism, then full preterism, then covenant creation. Every step of the way was like the next cave for me, until finally that next cave was atheism, because there was just nowhere else to go as a Christian. It's like once you put all the Bible in the past and realize that it's like there's no actual benefits that happen, it's like, where else are you going to go? So atheism was where I landed. But I'm no fool. Like I am a fool, I'm sure, but I try to think of myself as not a fool. But mostly because of that experience, I've realized, okay, Alan, because every time I went through one in my Christian life, I thought, that's it, I figured it all out. And then covenant creation showed up, and it's like, oh my God, I never got to IO like you did. So for me, that wasn't a stopping point for me. I got out even before that. But anyway, my point was, every time I thought, well, that's it, I figured it all out. And then another thing happened. So now I'm at a stage in my life where I'm like, yeah, I just I have no idea. I literally have no idea. And I'm completely cool with discovering the next stage. And atheism and agnosticism may not be my stopping point. Frankly, I hope we figure out where the universe did come from, because once we do that, then I can be I could be a Gnostic atheist. I can know a God doesn't exist. And at that point, because then we'll actually know, unless the God is the answer, who knows? But anyway, so yeah, to your point, Jamin, I remain an agnostic because I know there's another cave coming. I know there is, or that I'm in it right now, and I expect it to the door to open and me to come out and be like, I see the light again. And that'll happen, I'm sure. So I anticipate it, and in fact, I hope there is, because that's part of what made my life so fun so far, is constant discovery and constant movement and constant growth. I actually get very sad when people tell me, "Oh, I believe what I believe for the last 50 years, son, and I've never changed my mind." I'm like, that is a sad life, yo. Like, I don't get that at all. I like change. I like growing. I like learning, because that's what makes life fun, is when you discover things. So that's kind of where I'm at. The other thought I have to what you said, Jamin, is the whole when you're trying to help people, there's no secondary motive of trying to win them to Jesus. I remember when I was a pastor, it's like, let's go out and do this service project to help people, but let's make sure we take our invite cards and water bottles with our church name on it and give it. And it's like, I look back on that, it's like kind of so disappointing now when I think about it. It was like all of it had this ulterior motive of winning them to the church, whereas now it's just, I don't have one. I help them because I help them.
Yeah, and I think that we felt like we were being so sneaky about it, and now on the other side, like, it's so obvious and so cringy. It's just like, oh, the church is
So
going out to like service day, like it's just so it looks really pathetic, for lack of a
so
better term, on
pathetic,
this side.
dude.
But I remember feeling like, in praying before we go out, that God's going to use us, and that this is like, we felt like we were sneaking around and like changing the world and saving souls. But yeah, we
Yeah,
were not
dude.
nearly as
It's
stealthy
I'm
as we
so
thought.
glad you mentioned that one, because that is I have a whole section in my book about that. I mean, it's like one of my pet peeves now, just realizing how pathetic that is. You're not actually going because you care about people. I mean, you do and you don't. Like, in the
You think
idea,
you do.
you think you do because you think
That's
you're winning
disheartening.
them to a greater purpose, right? But it's
Yeah.
not. Yeah, it's pretty rough. Tim, Tristan just blanked out for a second. Tim, you want to respond to Jamin?
Yeah, and I think it was great thoughts. I don't have too much to add. I would just add an illustration I think that helps me a lot with figuring out like where to go from here. I think I may have spoken with you about it before, Alan. But the idea of like, if somebody on the street, like a bum or a charlatan, gives you a blank check, or I'm sorry, a bad check for say $1 trillion, and you somehow convince yourself like, hey, this thing's going to cash, and you spent, you put it in a drawer, and someday you're going to go to the bank, and maybe 40 years into your journey, you take this beautiful check for $1 trillion, and you take it to the bank, and you've been sure this whole time that it's going to cash, and then the teller says it's just a fake check. And you have two choices at that point. You can say to yourself, woe is me, this is awful, I had such big plans, I had such expectations, I had everything planned out, and now I've lost so much. Or you could say, I never had it, I never had any of that stuff, I was just deceived. But you then have that freedom to say, well, what would I have done if I'd walked down that street that day and I'd never met that guy who gave me that bad check, and I'd never had that stuff in my head? What kind of person would I have been? I would have just kept walking, and it would have been a beautiful day, and my life would have been fine without this stuff. It would have been completely fine without it. But because you convince yourself it's so real, and like in the Matrix, your mind makes it real. When it hits that you don't have it, it's like, oh no, this is crazy, this is horrible. But it's not actually that crazy. I think that's one of the most beautiful things about the healing process, is when you get to a certain point where you're way past it, 6 12 months, 2 3 years. I'm now going on almost 6 years out. You get to a point where you can't quite picture yourself, like it's almost like that life was so far distant. You're like, I would never buy into a blank check again, or a $1 trillion check again. No one's going to get me to believe that stuff anymore. And your whole life is so beautiful now. And I think it's hard though, because you do want to admit to yourself, I know what the person who's just discovering, like what's sort of like common knowledge to us right now. There's someone that's just discovering it tonight. And they're, for the first time in their life, they're saying, holy shit, this isn't real. And their life is getting turned upside down. Their marriage is about to end. They're going to lose family members. They're going to lose their job. And it's like, it's a crazy thing. But I try to help people, I think, to realize, if you had just never bought the lie, you would have been just fine. But that's obviously partly too the way that indoctrination in childhood works, is they got to get you while you're young, so that this is truly your everything. You've been holding on to this $1 trillion check since you were 3 years old. And again, that's part of reparenting, is going back and telling yourself, you never had a real check. This has always been fake. But if you can try to use your imagination and think, what could I have been in my life? You can at this point sort of pull the pieces together. And I do think as well that there's, I love how you all described and sort of touched on the idea of the beauty of life. I was listening to something from Neil deGrasse Tyson the other day about some scientists were saying it's possible that we may even, like, our universe may literally entirely be inside of a black hole. Like, we may be living in a black hole ourselves. Even though we have black holes in our black hole, we may be in a black hole entirely. Who knows? Who knows what we're going to discover as time goes on? And obviously the biggest discoveries will be way beyond our timeline, which that's another piece of this is you're finite. And I think every day that passes, it hits me more. I mean, I literally think about my old age and my death all the time. And I don't mean to be morbid about that, but I think it makes you, sort of count the days, what is it? Carpe diem, seize the day, redeem the time because the days are evil, redeem the time, because at this point you do have to see yourself as on a very short leash on a clock that is ticking. And it's not that every second counts, but it kind of does, because if you really want to make your life count for your kids and for your grandkids and all that, you have to make your life beautiful. And I feel like somebody said to me years ago, an illustration that I thought was really helpful. They said, everybody in their life gets to the bottom of the barrel at some point, but you don't have to lick the splinters on purpose when you get there. And I feel like for a lot of us, we are at the bottom of the barrel when we realize God's not real. And it's just like, for ignoring all the Christian snark about it, like you're just pretending you want to sin. Like, no, I really believed, and now I really don't. And it was completely real to me. And now I feel like I've just escaped a mental prison. But that is such a bizarre nightmare to go through at first. But to say, you know what, you take this one step at a time. You surround yourself with really good people. You've realized how disconnected you've been from your identity. Just take little steps, a little bit every day. And eventually you get to a point where you say, like, there is such beauty in life. I am freaking alive. I mean, just imagine the chance of you not even existing. You're alive. And you've got at least a little bit of time left, hopefully, if not more. And at that point, I think it's, again, the poetry part of it comes out in terms of healing, but also the poetry of just the beauty of the sunset. And I feel like for me, one of the most beautiful things in life that just drives me every day is to say, how can I make life more beautiful? Not just in little senses, like, make your kids a nice meal, but like truly transcendent. Like, there's nothing transcendent in the biggest sense that as far as I'm aware, but you can't really live in nihilism. I think you and I, Alan, have talked about this before, but you can't, even though I'm a nihilist, I can't live there. I have to live as if I'm going to get rewards at the end of this thing. I'm living for a reward that I know I will never get. I'm living for beauty that I know is in the eye of the beholder. I know that I'm making a meaning that actually is in a context where there is no such thing as meaning. There is no such thing as even transcendent morality, but you can't live that way. You can't say, well, there's no morality, so I'm going to go steal from my neighbor, whatever. Like, you live as if it all matters, even though you know it doesn't. And it's a weird paradox. And to me, that's one of the hardest things to wrap your mind around, is to say, how do you live a meaningful life knowing that it doesn't matter? How do you live a life that's beautiful knowing that there's no such thing as beauty, really? We're just evolved primates making shit up. But I think when you get to a point where you say, if Christianity gave me something good, and it gave me a lot of bad stuff, but if it gave me something good, it gave me an imagination to see beyond the today, beyond the dirty curb and the changing the tire, shaving. Like, it gave me a beauty to say there's something bigger here. And I'll just say this and wrap up, because I know we're probably almost at time. But I grew up watching a show. I watched it far too many times. I'm ashamed to say it. I won't even say how many times I watched it. But a show called Anne of Green Gables. It's a series of books, but it's also a show. There's a Canadian version from back in the 70s or 80s. And I grew up on that. And I mean, as a conservative fundamentalist Christian home, there wasn't that much that you could just devour and it would be completely safe from start to finish. But this was one of them. This was completely safe. No sexuality, no curse words, no nothing. And so we were allowed to watch it as much as we wanted to. And I watched it over and over and over. And this character, Anne, she keeps on, she fumbles all over the place, but she keeps on saying this phrase, you need to have a scope for the imagination. And they'd pass by a lake and they'd say, oh, that's Barry Lake. No, that's the Lake of Shining Waters. And to just say, I'm going to make life beautiful. And in my mind, I literally, in an OCD sense, remember at the end of the Matrix Matrix 1, where they reset it, or Matrix 2, where they reset it, where like literally they push a button and the whole thing, like all this destruction, it just resets and the whole city resets. I do that in my head nonstop. I walk down a road with my kids. And in my mind, I'm resetting the cracks in the road and making it a nice new pavement. I see a dirty car and I'm cleaning it in my head. I do it millions of times a day, probably. But that's the beauty. You get to take life and make it more beautiful in whatever way you feel like. And I'll tell you, that's infectious, and it takes the depression away. And again, once you've hit the darkness, once you've been to the bottom of the barrel, you have to make that choice. I will always leave the darkness for the light. And when you do, man, oh man, there are some beautiful things that come out of it. I mean, you feel like there was never going to be enough time. And people have asked me, like, would you have wanted to go to heaven? I know people say, nah, it would have been boring. I wanted to live forever because there is never going to be enough time for me to create and enjoy as much beauty as I can imagine creating and enjoying. I would have wanted to live a trillion years to enjoy it all. And it just, again, it bubbles up inside of you. There is beauty outside of Christianity if you let yourself take this healing journey. Does that make sense at all?
No, sure. Oh, to me, absolutely. In fact, I think that's why religions exist at all, because I think they're trying to solve that dilemma that you were talking about, the pointlessness of life, the lack of purpose. And so they try to figure out a way to give people some sort of a semblance of hope or reason for existence. And then it just becomes a monster, and people get trapped in the virus where it has to be only this way or that way or that way. And it's when you were talking, one of the things that I kept thinking was, as a Christian, I remember feeling such a lack of compassion for what it felt like for people to escape cults. It just didn't seem that big a deal. It was like, oh, we just got out of a cult. Congratulations. Now that I did it, I'm like, oh my God, I can't, like, the sadness I feel for all the people that they went, all the people that I didn't, I thought it was just simple, but it isn't. They're all the same. They all went through the same pain that we went through. Like, it sucks. But I didn't feel that for them, because I thought, well, Christianity is the only true religion. Just come join us and everything your problems are solved. Now I feel it, now it's painful, but yeah, no, I get what you're saying. The imagination's good. And I think feeling like that and trying to imagine how to live this life in a way that sounds more hopeful is good. People want to pretend like there's got to be a reason for existence. And the reality is there doesn't have to be. It's just, you may want there to be, and you can make it whatever you want it to be, and that's fine. Do it. Make the most of your life, and that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to make the best of my life so that when I'm on my deathbed, taking that last breath, I'm not worried about heaven. I'm wondering, did I live my best life and enjoy this to the best I can? And that's what I'm doing now. So yeah, I thought that was great. Tristan, real quick, respond. You can respond to Tim if you want, but I definitely want you to respond to the thoughts Jamin had. And then if you guys have a few extra minutes, I'd like to do my little story, and then we can respond to those and then be out. Tristan, go ahead.
No, I mean, Tim and Jamin, you guys gave some tremendous input. I can't wait to subscribe to your YouTube channels. Tim, you really hit home on a lot of things, especially the reset. How you reset these things. I started delving into phenomenology years back, and there were, Western philosophers, looking at everything analytically, logically, leaning towards phenomenology. They say has been a deliverance. And I'm starting to delve into that. Everything's kind of like in the subjective experience, and that key word experience is something that I strive for. Every day I want to experience healthy, good things, good times. So that's what I'm aiming for in life is to have good experiences. Are bad things going to happen? Are hurtful things going to happen? Of course. But like you said before, I'm gonna choose the light over the darkness. And at the end of the day, I mean, you said some tremendous things, Jamin. You said some tremendous things as well that definitely hit home. And like I said before, the best days are ahead of us, and the information that you've provided just here on this podcast, I know that for a fact. Your best days are ahead of you, and anybody who listens to you guys, you can change their life for the good and for the better. And so I just want to thank you for just having me on this podcast and sharing this. It's one thing that I do miss about the church is my friends, my brothers, my sisters, that social aspect. I came from a mega church, thousands. We had a radio station, we had a Bible college, we had a K1 through K12 school, two major facilities. It was a landmark for our movement. We had Bible college students coming in every semester by the hundreds, and being in that place of position, being in that status in the church, having all these friends, having all this. I don't have that to that degree anymore. But this has been much more beneficial. You know, I feel like I'm in seminary again, you know, except we're on another level. You know, we've been there, we've done that. And so that is one thing that I do miss, is the social aspect, of having that community type, you know. But this is why I think that, you know, we can reach people. You know, maybe some people feel lonely, after they leave the church. You know, loneliness could lead towards depression and suicide. You know, and you know, I'm hoping that nobody gets to that place where they would want to take their life. And so I think that you guys can literally help those who may be suicidal. The information that we have can help those who are battling with depression, trying to find a meaning and a purpose in life. And even if there is no true meaning and purpose of life, you know, like Epicurus, we die, we go back to non-existent. At the end of the day, I like to believe that there is a purpose. And so I'm going to live my life just like how you said, Tim, like there is a purpose, like there is a meaning. It just makes it much more beautiful. Could it be, you know, the concept of narrative? You know, we're evolved primates. Maybe we just have that concept of narrative, of storytelling that's deeply embedded in our, possibly. Maybe that's what it is. It's all built on language and imagination, language schemes. Maybe, you know, I'm not a staunch materialist. I'm not a reductionist, but maybe it's romanticism. I don't know. But at the end of the day, you guys touch on some great points, that is absolutely life changing. I'm looking forward to hearing more from the both of you guys. So I can't wait to, you know, subscribe to your guys' channels, and, you know, just delve into it, and just thank you. You know, thank you for that insight. It's very beneficial. Thank you for that.
Definitely beneficial. And you know, speaking of purpose in life, like because of Christianity, I feel like I have a purpose in life. It's helping people escape. I mean, it's weird to think about, because if I were never a Christian, I wouldn't have that purpose. But now I have a purpose in life. It's so funny. I mean, for everybody, Darwin loves you. So you know, that's my new message to the world. Jamin, I don't before I tell my story and try to wrap this thing up, do you want, because what Tim said was so rich. I just wanted to make sure you had a chance to respond to it if you had thoughts.
I had a lot of thoughts while he was talking, and then I got caught up in Tristan stuff. So sorry.
Well, then feel free to respond to both. That's fine, man. That's
Yeah.
fine. I mean, the world would love to hear what you have to say. That's why you're here.
I'm gonna go ahead and pass. I can't say anything that you guys haven't already said more clearly. So yeah.
No worries. Perfect. So, all right. So I'll try to keep my portion short, and then you guys can each respond to what I say, like we've been doing. And then lastly, we'll take questions. Before I tell my portion of the night, if you do have questions for any of the hosts here tonight or guests here tonight, make sure you start popping them into the comments. And as soon as I'm done and everybody responds here to what I say, we're going to take the last questions, and then we'll be out for the night. So for me, starting from that point where I left Christianity, I think one of the reasons why I wept so hard, and I've been in therapy for this for the last 5 years since I've escaped Christianity. And I'll be honest, I'm still in therapy for it. It's um it's the recognition, or the feeling, I should say, the false feeling that I have zero value as a person. Um if you follow the biblical message, if you actually teach or pay attention to the text, it is your best is like filthy rags. There is none good, no, not one. You're a maggot, you're a worm, you know, much of the same stuff I put in the video at the beginning. You're a sinner. You literally have no value in and of yourself, because you are deserving of nothing but the wrath of God because of how much of a wicked, evil piece of shit sinner you are. And as a pastor, I always had the desire to truly teach the Bible. I it was it for there was for some reason I just genuinely cared about the message of the Bible. Like, I wasn't out to make the money or the big bucks. If I wasn't, you know, planting a preterist church certainly wasn't the way to go about making money. Tristan, you can vouch for that. I mean, that isn't the way to go. So it was never about the money for me. It was genuinely about the truth of the Bible, and ultimately that's why I think I ended up an atheist, because for me, truth always mattered. So my interpretation of the text was always about, what does it actually teach? Not what do I want it to teach? Not do I want to make people comfortable? Not do I want to make me comfortable? It was, what does this actually teach? And so that message of worthlessness, evil, horrible sinner, that because of you, Jesus had to die. That kind of horrible message. I applied that to myself fully 100,000%. I was in on that message. And so I degraded myself to that point where I was a worthless person, but for the grace of God, but for Jesus. And so I was so enamored with Jesus because of that, because I needed him so desperately to have any worth or value in life. So that was my life as a Christian. And so Jamin, I told you earlier about Christian hedonism, John Piper. So I came to the idea, and I was grateful for Piper for pointing this out, that my greatest pleasure in life was God himself, because if I pursued God with all of my life, that would be the only way that I could possibly be happy, right? Because if I pursued anything else, I'd be miserable because I was worthless. There was nothing else to pursue. So I became a Christian hedonist. I was for my pleasure. I drove after Christ. I chose Christ. I chased him with all of my might, because that was the only way to satisfy my inner self, because I had nothing in me to do that. When I hit that moment of atheism, Jesus was gone. And it was this darkness, like an emptiness inside of me. It was just so much pain, because I thought I was worthless. And I didn't have a savior anymore to make me worth something. See, you Christians don't understand that when you teach this message, you devalue people so much that when they realize the truth, they're still in that place of feeling like they're worthless. And it took me 5 years. It's still, like I said, I'm still in therapy, but to get to a point where I feel like I am somebody. I can be somebody. I can be happy in myself. And now I'm just like, yes, I can be confident. I can do things without some other person to give me my worth. And I'm sorry for tearing up, but I remember that day so much, and it was just so much pain, So, God, this particular episode is so important to me, because y'all need to understand that if you are teaching the Bible the way it's taught, it is an evil message. It tears people down. It brings them to nothing. So here I am, 5 years later, and this. If anybody wants to know why I was so motivated to write a book that can help remove the brainwashing and help people get out of this mess, it's not because I'm trying to destroy lives. It's because I'm trying to wake people up and teach them that there is value in and of yourself, and you don't need a God that's going to tell you you're worthless. That is evil. That's about as immoral as it gets. So yeah, this is important to me. So yeah, it takes a lot of therapy sometimes to heal from this mess that Christianity traps us in. It makes me think back to for some reason his name's evading me from the Matrix, the guy who went back.
Cypher.
Thank you, Tim. Yeah, Cypher. I get it. I get it totally. Because I felt that a lot of times, like maybe I should just go back, because if I go back, I'll have value again, and so like I get it. I get when people are in this turmoil of wanting to go back to Christianity because they think there's something there. There isn't something there. It's just a continuous deterioration of yourself is what's there. But because you don't know yet at this early stage how to get yourself to feel like you're worth something, it just seems like it's easier to just go back and live in that world. But I can promise you that if you just hang on and maybe go through therapy like I'm doing and find yourself an awesome therapist. I love my therapist. Freaking awesome. Like I had him even before I deconverted. I had him just even going through all the mess of my divorce and the church and everything like that, losing everything. He has taken me so far. And ironically, he's Jewish. But he's the coolest guy ever because he doesn't make it a part of the therapy. But we've had some fun debates too. So that's all been a lot of fun too. But yeah, you might need a therapist. But at the end of the day, and Jamin, you talked about the stages of grief. I talk about that in my book as well. I've gone through the stages of grief several times. Probably the one I've gone through the most is anger. Like man, do I get pissed at what Christianity did to me. I hate the fact that I still struggle to feel value as a person. Like 40 years of beating myself up and telling myself I'm a useless, worthless person without this man named Jesus. Like, seriously, right now? That's what my parents taught me. That's what these religious people taught me. That's what everybody in my life. That's what I taught myself. I lived for 40 years. I said, Alan, you're worthless. Just think about that for a second. God, that's horrible, right? I mean, that's absolutely disastrous. So, yeah. So even now, to this day, I still battle that. And that's hard. So yeah, I'm on a desperate mission to help people get out as early as they can, because the sooner you get out, the faster you can heal and the faster you can actually enjoy life. So yeah, that's my story. And I'm so glad to be out. And I look forward to the next several years where I become a stronger person and I can find even more value in myself. And I can say, yeah, Alan, you're a good guy, man. You don't need somebody else to tell you you're worth something. So anyway, that's my thoughts, and you guys can respond to that.
I had a quick response to that. It seems like it's all emotional blackmail. I mean, really, that's what this is it's an emotional blackmail scenario that we get from the earliest days. And I hear you. It's amazing too to think that in many ways, too, the issue is not just are you worthy with or without a God and with or without the gospel. The issue is just, is worth even a thing? I mean, I can't imagine what an animal thinks, but I don't think lions sit around thinking, am I worthy? Or turtles or fish. We just happen to evolve this consciousness that happens to OCD dwell on this stuff. But it's like it's almost like two stages. We need to kind of count ourselves and make ourselves worthy because we're responding to the worthlessness message that we were given in Christianity. And by the way, you have some kind of jackass in the comments that keeps saying that's not a message from God. Talk about a distortion. Elisha's Bones. I'm not sure who that person is, but they're just completely ignoring like a huge chunk of the Bible and saying that. But the reality is that these messages are from the Bible, and but beyond that, like when you step out of it and you heal and say, no, I'm worth something without God, that it's almost like there's a stage 2 of that of saying, does it even matter? And I think for me, that's one of the most healing things, is to say you need to find your worth outside of Christianity. And then you need to eventually take the word worthiness out of your vocabulary. And it's a weird process. And in some ways, I don't know that I'm anywhere near doing it. But like when I deconstruct stuff, I think the biggest thing for me is to say that they didn't just give you concepts. They gave you a whole language and vocabulary. They didn't just give you promises. They gave you the filter to interpret the promises. And we can call the promises bullshit and the Bible bullshit, but the filter is still there in many ways. And I think for a lot of us, it's gonna take a lot of time, but to give ourselves that sense you're a good person, and then to eventually say it doesn't even matter. It's like worthiness is not a thing. And so I definitely feel you, and I think the coolest thing about this too is that when you begin to develop your own language for this, eventually your language, you realize you're the way that you see yourself and you talk to yourselves, it becomes so kind. You learn to talk to yourself with kindness, and it's so foreign from Christianity. It really is. I mean, I know, oh, come as you are and God loves you, blah, blah, blah. No, you come as you are, but then acknowledge you're worthless sinner, deserving incredible judgment, and you're nothing without him. And you grovel. But when you get far enough past the stuff, you talk to yourself differently, and you become your own best friend, and that's a beautiful thing. So I appreciate by the way, your vulnerability. You're a good man, Alan. I appreciate your honesty and openness with your journey. It means a lot to us.
Yeah, I agree with that. Also, I'd like to address the jackass, if that's all right.
I guess.
Dear jackass, I am you. So I would have said the same thing not all that long ago. I would have probably wept with you, Alan, and I would have said, I'm so sorry that you got that message from your church. That's not God's message for your life. You're just reading it wrong. You're interpreting it wrong. God loves you. You have infinite value. And I would have given you a bunch of verses that said all that stuff. And also tomorrow, when I was trying to convert someone else, I would have told them all the things that you just said, because they're both in the Bible if you want to read them that way, if you are depending on what your motivation is and where you're trying to get your audience. You can use both of those messages. It's definitely like this manipulative relationship with this God, where it's like, I love you, I don't love you, I love you, I hate you, I'm gonna slaughter you, and then I want to save you. You're of infinite value, you're dirty rags. Yeah, I've got a lot of empathy for the people who say those kinds of things, because I would have too. But also, if God can write a book that genuine, honest believers can read so damagingly into their lives, he's a sucky author, and he should have written a better book. I could have done better. My kids, I don't think that if I wrote a book to them, they would accidentally come away with the message that Papa thinks that I'm horrible, and that my best actions are like dirty rags, and all my artwork is crap, and he's disgusted by me, and he wants to murder me unless I do all the things exactly the way that he says, and I say the right words, and if I think the right things, then I'll be good enough, or I will have done the right things so that he'll forgive me, and then he'll let me stick around in the house. I don't think they would come away with that message. And I'm not the world's best author. I'm much closer to the world's worst author, but I could do better. And if God can't, that means that, maybe there's something wrong in that philosophy. So I've got a lot of empathy for the people who, like, that's their first reaction, because I think that is the right human reaction. I think Mr. Jackass or Mrs. Jackass or they them jackass, I don't care. There's all kinds of different jackasses. But their message is it's the same one that I would have given, and I think probably, hopefully, I know my intent would have been good, and that humanitarian, human reaction is the right reaction, and that doesn't come from God. That comes from being a human and seeing someone in pain, saying, I feel like I'm worthless, and wanting to say, you're not worthless. But that message does not come exclusively from God. That comes from us humans. And so, as a human, Alan, I gotta say, I love you, and I'm glad that you're here, and I'm glad to be sharing this moment with you. I don't think it has anything to do with God. I just think that you're great, and keep going. I'm rooting for you.
Appreciate it, buddy. Tristan.
Yeah, a lot of just a lot of virtuous statements here, that I believe that can help a lot of people. There's a dear friend of mine who I converted to Christianity. A lot of this, it reminds me of her. As a matter of fact, I converted her. I have the most purest intentions of her, and she came into the church. And her, she struggled throughout her life. Her father committed suicide when she was 11 years old. And even to this day, I have that same empathy for her. And at the end of the day, it's people like her, victims of evil, victims of unfortunate circumstances, that I am trying to help. And if there's anything that I can do to better their lives, I have that. And by the way, the guy here in this chat, Elisha's Bones, he appeared on my podcast twice. He's challenged full preterists, Alan, by the way. And I don't know, this is no way to win over a soul, by the way. His name is Steven. I don't know if you know who he is, Alan. His name is Stephen Whitsett. We had a debate.
Seriously? That's who that is?
Yeah. Elisha Bones is Stephen Whitsett right now. Yeah.
Geez,
I mean,
okay.
it's yeah, I like the eye rolling. But I still have this same passion. Everything that you guys stated hits home tremendously. I truly believe that if there is a God or a mind out there, I believe that we're doing its will, not his will or her will, but whatever it is, I do believe that that we could possibly do its will, and so at the end of the day, I'm thankful, I'm thankful to be a part of this, and I'm thankful to to be on this side, to be on this team. And like I stated before, there are people who I've converted to Christianity that know where I'm at. They know that I'm a skeptic. They know that, I have different views, how I was first. And sometimes it's radical. Sometimes they ghost me. I like to say Holy Ghost. They Holy Ghosted me, and they'll never talk to me again. But I have those, like Christina, who I had mentioned before. We were hanging out recently, and I thought, I have much more love for her now outside of that Christian paradigm, because it's not about, oh, it's a reward to go to heaven. It's not about, oh, it's something that because God has commanded us to do. It's something that I truly feel in my heart. And what can I say? I believe that we are better people now than we were before. And you know, what can I say? I'm grateful for hearing your guys' input, and I'm just thankful to live life. And at the end of the day, our best days are ahead of us, and that's all I got to say. That's my close.
I appreciate it. I mean, speaking of everything that I just said in my testimony, Steve Witt said, "While we were yet sinners, Christ died." I mean, what? Seriously, like, bro, I just finished talking about how painful that is, and this is your message. This is how you're going to win. Like, I just don't get it. I honestly don't. I don't see it anymore. I don't understand how I ever even told people that.
Can I say something about that, Alan, real quick?
Yeah.
I just want to make sure every YouTube channel is going to do things differently. And I certainly hope that there's different places where people feel like if they want to debate, they can. But my message to someone like that person, Elisha's Bones, your message and your input is irrelevant to us. And there's a reason that we don't really have theists for the most part on a lot of our channels. Your message is irrelevant and you're no longer part of the discussion. We are not here to debate anymore whether Christianity is true. We are not here to debate the benefit of Jesus or his death or his magic blood or Yahweh. The discussion is over. It's been over for a long time. If you don't want to catch up with us, that's fine. Go to other channels where they're willing to talk about this bizarre blood magic death cult that you're in love with. But the discussion's over. We're here to heal. And you want to gaslight us. We're not going to keep on saying, oh, yeah, you're right. Let us argue with you some more. We're going to, pardon my French, we're going to fucking ignore you. You're no longer relevant to the conversation. We're here to heal. And people like you are not part of that process. And we're not going to listen. We're going to tune you out because you're incredibly damaging and people like you. And I got to say, I love the fact when you get to a point where you say, I don't care what apologists say. I don't care what Christians want to say. The reality is that discussion is over. That chapter's closed. My life is now focused on freeing people. And it's so sick to me that people like that want to try to do more damage after they've done already. It's like they've thrown grenades in the building 100 times. And now we finally said enough. We've walked away and they want to keep on lobbing grenades at us. I'm like, you don't understand. Our minds are free. You're like a machine in the Matrix trying to beg us to come back in and enjoy the captivity in the prison. Like I'm sorry, but you are blind. You are so blind. And I'm so glad that not just that I can argue against those people, but that I don't have to, and I don't want to, and I can just move on from people like them. And I wish them well in their life, but the discussion's over. It's been over. You can say all you want a million times. No, it's not over. Jesus is Lord. It's over. It's been over, and it's going to stay over.
Kit, I want to totally affirm. I agree with that message. Also, in addition to that, my message would include an invitation to that person that you can be part of the conversation. You can be part of the healing, like Jesus was. If you want, depending on how you want to read the Bible, he did not go out and tell people how to live. He went out and empathized with people. And if we're going to try to if we need a biblical explanation to do that, what we're saying here is whatever your background, whatever your mythology, whatever your belief, whatever your theology, humans should be loving to other humans without trying to sell them something else. So when you see someone in pain, you can just be with them in their pain without also trying to sell them a remedy that they're opposed to. So it's not like, well, I don't like your remedy, and so I don't want to interact with you. It's we're just doing something different here. So you can just empathize with a person and say, I'm sorry that you're in pain, and not say, and take these essential oils and then you'll be all better, or whatever your thing is. Like, you can be part of the conversation. It's just not peddling your solution to their problems. Maybe let them work their way through their problems without the solution that you used.
No, I think it's a great invitation. And I think one of the problems with being a Christian is you're still trapped in that mind virus that believes there's a void that needs a resolution, or that needs a sale, or it needs a product to fill.
Well, there's only one real problem in the world, and the only real solution is Jesus.
Well, right.
So, yeah. Okay.
Right. So as a Christian, you're a sinner. You need Jesus, right? So that's the void. They've created a problem. So unfortunately, as long as you're still stuck in that matrix, you still think that there's a problem that needs to be fixed, and so it's next to impossible as a Christian to and I don't know how you did it. Maybe so. Actually, Jamin, this would be a great place for you to give advice to how a Christian might do it, because in my form of Christianity, it was, well, the problem is they're sinners and they need Jesus. So the only and I wouldn't have been an asshole like this person is, but at the same time, I would have still, with compassion, come and said, listen, I understand what you're going through, but Jesus can solve this. This is because you're in the
Right.
rut of sin. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like I would compassionately said, but I still would have brought it in, because that's the void that needs a sail.
Right. So then I would ask the Christian, what should a Scientologist say to be helpful in this situation? Well, they're not going to, we don't want them to peddle their religion. That's no good. Don't say anything about Scientology. I guess you could say, I'm sorry you're in pain. I hope you feel better. I can relate to that. You know, other things that just are between you and them as a human, but please don't bring your Scientology into it. No Christian wants them to do that and convert them into Scientology. Like, that's dangerous. So just say the things you would want a Scientologist or a Mormon to say to them, which would just be the things that a human should say, and then leave the rest of it out of it if that's not what they're into.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it's great advice, and I wish that all could do it. And I think that that's sure, if everybody could do it. Like, look, bro, what you just said, if Christianity could actually do that and not tear people down and make them feel like they're worthless, it probably wouldn't be such a harmful religion. But that's part of what destroyed me, and that's why I hate it so much, and why I'm completely 100% opposed to it and trying to help people get out, because it isn't just a religion that creates wars and talks about murder and sin and pedophilia and rape or whatever. You know, it deteriorates the individual so much, like it did to me. And some of y'all are lucky to have been in a Joel Osteen type church that just praised everybody and talked great things. That's not the Bible message. That's more of a, the Tony Robbins type thing, which is cool, but sorry, that's not Christianity. That's your own, whatever you want it to be, because you're out to, be popular, which I'm totally cool with, but don't call it Christianity, because it's not. So that's my beef. So anyway, but I love what you said. I wish everybody could be like that, but yeah, that's not the typical message. Go ahead.
Also, just one word to represent all of us who think that Joel Osteen is evil and that what he does is also equally cultish. So anyway, I would hate to be part of a podcast that put him on a pedestal in the Christian world. So,
No, that's fair.
I know what you're saying.
I just wish that he would not use Christianity as a platform. Like, if he just did what he did without using the Bible and Christianity as his platform, I probably would be in favor of it, because I think he does preach a lot of good stuff and positivity and helps people. But the problem is he utilizes this religion to motivate people, and I think that's kind of an immoral approach. But like, Tony Robbins does the same basic thing, and I think he's dope. But maybe you all disagree. I don't know. I mean, feel free. Maybe everybody has.
I've been inspired by a lot of the things that he said before.
Tony Robbins or
both of them. Sure,
both of them. Right, exactly.
I'll take good advice from anybody.
Yeah, true. I don't know, Tim. You seem to be the voice of reason continuously. So, you have any thoughts on it?
Well, I think you guys are bringing up great points. I'll say I don't find most preachers to be helpful to me in any sense, even the liberal ones. I think it's all, because to me, it's variations on the theme of a cult. They're all cults in different ways. Some of them are much more damaging, but I will admit, the only part of the touchy-feely Christianity that gets me is some of the worship music, and maybe this is something Jamin can definitely appreciate. But like there is the Bethel music. There is a couple in that group named Brian and Jen Johnson, and they've got a song called "You're Gonna Be Okay." And I will admit, there were times in the first year after my deconversion that I played that song quite a bit, and I don't think they talk about Jesus at all. I might be mistaken, but I haven't listened to it for a while. But like, there is a part of me that does find some of those touchy-feely parts where they're just like, your life's going to be okay. Just calm it down. Let things take their course. You're going to be okay. I do find some value in that. But I did just want to, if I could make my last word, I need to jump here because my kids are ready for bed. But if I'm going to put something in the comments, and this is literally like as a final word, this is like completely off topic, and I apologize. But one of the things that's helped me the most in my journey is to say, you've never really learned how to dance. I mean that both metaphorically and literally. And I mean, I've taken ballroom dancing classes and all that, but I'm like to dance like no one's looking. And there was a show, and again, I apologize, this is going to sound a little bit off topic, but there was a show called Andor from Star Wars. Has any of you seen that yet?
Uh-uh.
There is, Andor is a great show. I highly recommend it. But I'm gonna put a link in the chat here for a minute. There is a scene at near the very end where this woman, she has a beautiful life. She's a politician, but she's part of the Empire. But she's secretly on the side of the rebels, and she's about to basically have to give up her entire life and go work with the rebels, give up her husband, her children, her wealth, and just basically go live in a cave somewhere and help the rebels to fight the evil Empire and Darth Vader. But be right at the very end of that process, it's her daughter's wedding, and they are playing what I would think is probably classified as rave music. And I mean, it took my breath away. Honestly, it's one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. And this lady, she drinks a couple, hard drinks, and she starts dancing like her life depends on it, and also like no one's watching, and like she's got 3 minutes to live. And I know it's just a show, but it's like, you have never emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, or even physically danced like that. And I encourage people, watch this video if it helps you. Maybe you won't think it's so cool. Maybe you'll want to watch the whole thing of Andor, but at least watch this 3-minute video and learn to dance. Your life is short. Dance through it. And I feel like a lot of the stuff we're doing is we're trying to deal with hard questions. But I think of it in many ways like a table. Like say you've got a table that it's dinner time, and your kids have papers on there and they're drawing and there's different things. There's drinks from lunch, and it's like, it's dinner time. I need the table cleared. All that we've been doing this whole time, and all that I do on my channel this whole time, and I'm kind of deprecating myself here and saying this, but all we're doing is clearing the table. We haven't started the meal yet. The meal is to dance in your life, the dance of the beautiful relationships we have and all this stuff we've talked about. But to be able to say, I am truly going to embrace myself and like live like I'm dancing. I don't think I'm doing that yet. I will admit I'm not doing it. All I'm doing so far in my life at this point in my deconstruction is I'm just clearing the table. It's dinner time. We're talking about getting rid of the bad stuff, but we need to get to the steak, the filet mignon, and the tiramisu, and the twice baked potatoes. Like, get to the meat of this thing of living. And if we spend all of our time saying, how do we get past religious trauma? And trust me, it's important. It's what I spend my whole life doing. But I think it's important to add, as my parting shot, if all we do is wring our hands, look at all this horrible stuff, if we don't end up as a conclusion to that saying, my God, look at this beautiful life. I don't mean my God like these if he's real, just like the way we look. Like, my God, look at this life. Start dancing. Like, clear the table, get the religious trauma gone, and start eating some really good meals. Because it's otherwise we're missing the point of life. You will you wasted your life in Christianity. You can continue to waste your life by just talking about how bad Christianity was. And I'm not saying it's not important. Again, I do it, but at the same time, I spent a lot of my time focusing on how to just dance again, and it's a beautiful thing. Anyway, when our chat here is over, if anyone wants to take a click on this link I'm going to put in the video, and honestly, learn to dance.
Hey, Alan, really quickly, every time I hear that word dance, I always think about the dancing in the street comments. I'm telling you, it's no matter. This is inside, you guys, Jamin and Tim. There's a scholar that I sponsored his debate with.
When he's
Richard
debating,
Carrier.
you're going to be debating him just in a couple weeks. So,
yeah, no, it's in August the 10th.
Okay.
And he made a very embarrassing statement, and he said that in 70 AD, when the Roman soldiers were torturing women and children, that Christians all throughout the world were dancing in the streets, and he's been getting hit hard with that. And so every time, Tim, when you say the word dance, and Alan, every time I hear it, I can hear it in a song. It's like until the day I die, I just think about how he had made that statement, and I'm just, oh my god! But that was very good, Tim. I mean, that's very, very, very virtuous. So meaningful. I can't wait. To subscribe to your channel and share your content. Alan and I, we're actually in a preterist group, a Facebook group. I actually shared the link to this podcast in that group. There's about 1,500 people in that group. I would absolutely love to, delve into your content, yours too, Jamin, and share it, because you guys, have a wealth of knowledge and insight. And I can't wait. This is tremendous.
Absolutely. Well, Tim, what, I mean, all I kept thinking about was Phil Collins. What if I can't dance? That was. or Michael Scott. Dunder
Michael
Mifflin.
Scott,
Dude, I
yeah.
love your shirt, Jamin. All I could think, like the whole show, I was just like, I love his shirt. I gotta get that Dunder Mifflin. It's so great, dude. Thanks for wearing that, bro. So everybody had a last chance. Jamin, any last comments?
No, I like what you're saying, Tim. I agree with that. There's a book, the sixth stage of grief, which is about that, about like trying to deal with like going through grief, but then on the other end making something of it too. Yeah, it's at some point you've got to, like you're saying, after you clear the table, then ask what's next. What was this all for? How do I make meaning out of this? So, I like it.
Awesome. Well, I see no questions that have come through, so no need to dive into that. So I think we're about good. Listen, if you were watching on Facebook, I apologize. It sounds like they were having issues today. It was going in and out, in and out. If you want to catch the whole episode, just go to YouTube at the Unraveler AB for Alan Bondar, the Unraveler AB, and you can watch the whole episode there. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being on this special episode of the Deconversionists. And I hope that those of you who are watching can kind of get a glimpse into what it is to deconvert from Christianity. It is quite a journey. It's not something that just happens, and we weren't faking, in case it wasn't obvious. So thank you again for being a part of this night. We hope that you all have a great time to the rest of this day and this evening. Check out the links below if you want to check anybody else out from this show. You guys have a great night.